It was a crisp, sunny morning in Los Angeles, the kind of day where everything seemed to sparkle under the California sun. The streets were alive with the hum of activity, cars zipping by, joggers weaving through sidewalks, and the faint scent of coffee wafting from nearby cafes. Amidst this bustling scene stood Keanu Reeves, Hollywood's beloved actor, walking toward his luxury condo building. Dressed casually in worn-out jeans, a simple black t-shirt, and his signature leather jacket, he blended seamlessly into the crowd. There was no entourage trailing behind him, no flashy car pulling up to the entrance. Just Keanu carrying a small paper bag that likely contained breakfast or maybe even a book. Keanu had always been different from other celebrities. While many of his peers lived lives surrounded by glitz, glamour, and constant attention, he preferred quiet simplicity. His condo was a sanctuary, a place where he could escape the chaos of fame and just be himself. For years, he had chosen this particular building not because it was extravagant, but because it felt like home. The staff knew him well, and the residents respected his privacy. It wasn't uncommon to see him chatting warmly with the doorman, or offering a friendly wave to neighbors passing by. He had built a reputation here as someone who was kind, unassuming, and genuinely approachable. But today was different. As Keanu approached the glass doors of the building, he noticed something unusual. Standing rigidly at the entrance was a new security guard, a tall man with broad shoulders and an air of authority about him. His name tag read Marcus, and his stern expression suggested he took his job very seriously. Keanu slowed his pace, slightly giving Marcus a polite nod as he reached for the door handle. Before he could step inside, however, Marcus stepped forward, blocking his path. "Excuse me, sir," Marcus said firmly, his voice deep and commanding. "This is a private residence. Only authorized personnel and residents are allowed entry." Keanu stopped mid-step, taken aback but not offended. He offered a warm smile, hoping to ease the tension. "Oh, I'm sorry," he replied calmly. "I actually live here. My name is Keanu Reeves. I'm one of the residents." For a moment, Marcus didn't respond. Instead, he studied Keanu closely, his eyes narrowing as if trying to determine whether this man was telling the truth. Finally, he shook his head. "Nice try," Marcus said, crossing his arms over his chest. "If you're really Keanu Reeves, then why don't you have your keycard? And why aren't you dressed like a celebrity?" Keanu blinked, surprised by the accusation. He hadn't expected this kind of reaction. Not here. Not in a place he called home. Still, he kept his composure, knowing full well that arguing wouldn't solve anything. "I must have left my keycard upstairs," he explained patiently. "But I assure you I live here. You can check with the building manager if you'd like." Marcus frowned, clearly unconvinced. "Look, buddy," he said, his tone growing sharper. "I've seen plenty of people try to pull stunts like this before. Celebrities think they can just waltz into any fancy building and pretend they belong, but not on my watch. If you're really who you say you are, prove it." The situation was becoming increasingly surreal. Here was Keanu Reeves, one of the most recognizable faces in the world, being accused of impersonating himself. Yet instead of feeling frustrated or insulted, Keanu found himself intrigued. He couldn't help but wonder what had led Marcus to react this way. Was it simply a matter of skepticism, or was there something deeper driving his behavior? Deciding to defuse the situation rather than escalate it, Keanu took a step back. "All right," he said, holding up his hands in a gesture of peace. "No problem. I'll call the building manager and sort this out." With that, he pulled out his phone and dialed the number, all while maintaining his trademark calm demeanor. As he waited for the manager to pick up, Keanu glanced around and noticed that a small crowd had begun to gather. Neighbors passing through the lobby paused to watch the unfolding drama, their expressions ranging from confusion to amusement. Some whispered among themselves, speculating about what might be happening. Others simply stared, unable to believe what they were seeing. Marcus, meanwhile, remained unmoved. He continued to stand firm, his stance unwavering despite the growing audience. To him, this was more than just a routine security check. It was a test of his integrity, In his mind, he was protecting the building from potential intruders, regardless of who they claimed to be. Fame meant nothing to him. Rules were rules, and he intended to enforce them without exception. When the building manager finally answered the phone, Keanu quickly explained the situation. After a brief conversation, the manager assured him they would resolve the issue promptly. Hanging up, Keanu turned back to Marcus with a reassuring smile. "They're sending someone down right away," he said. "In the meantime, I appreciate you doing your job. It's important to keep everyone safe." Despite his words, Marcus still looked skeptical. He muttered something under his breath about how celebrities always thought they were above the rules, but Keanu chose to ignore it. Instead, he leaned casually against the wall, observing the scene with quiet interest. This whole encounter felt almost surreal, like something out of a movie. But unlike the characters he played on screen, Keanu knew that real life rarely followed a script, and sometimes the most unexpected moments could lead to the greatest lessons. As the minutes ticked by, the tension in the air grew thicker, yet Keanu remained unfazed, his patience unwavering. Little did anyone know, this seemingly ordinary morning was about to take a turn that none of them would soon forget. As the standoff between Keanu and Marcus continued, the small crowd of onlookers grew larger. Word had spread quickly through the building. "Keanu Reeves is being denied entry." The news traveled like wildfire, drawing residents out of their apartments and into the lobby. Some came out of curiosity, others out of concern, but all were captivated by the bizarre scene unfolding before them. Whispers filled the air as people tried to make sense of what was happening. "He lives here," one woman whispered to her husband, shaking her head in disbelief. "I've seen him in the elevator dozens of times." "Well, maybe it's not really him," another man chimed in skeptically. "You know how these celebrity impersonators are. They look just like the real thing." The skepticism wasn't limited to Marcus alone. A few residents began to murmur among themselves, questioning whether this man truly was Keanu Reeves. After all, why would someone so famous leave his keycard behind? And why did he seem so ordinary? In a world obsessed with glitz and glamour, Keanu's laid-back appearance only added to the confusion. To some, it seemed almost too good to be true that the star of blockbuster hits like The Matrix and John Wick could be standing right there in jeans and sneakers. But not everyone was convinced by Marcus's accusations. Mrs. Evelyn Harper, a retired schoolteacher who had lived in the building for over 20 years, stepped forward from the crowd. She was a petite woman with silver hair and a no-nonsense attitude, and she rarely hesitated to speak her mind when she saw injustice. Fixing Marcus with a sharp glance, she said firmly, "Young man, I think you're making a terrible mistake." Marcus turned to face her, his expression hardening. "Ma'am, I'm just doing my job," he replied curtly. "If this person is who he claims to be, then proving it shouldn't be a problem." Evelyn crossed her arms, unimpressed by his tone. "Oh, I don't doubt that you're doing your job," she said, her voice steady. "But have you ever considered that sometimes people aren't lying? This is Keanu Reeves. I've known him for years. He's one of the kindest, most humble men I've ever met." Her words drew murmurs of agreement from several residents. One man nodded vigorously, adding, "She's right. I've seen him helping Mrs. Patel carry her groceries upstairs. You won't find many celebrities willing to do that." Despite the growing support for Keanu, Marcus remained unconvinced. He glanced at the actor, who was still leaning casually against the wall, scrolling through his phone as if nothing unusual was happening. Something about Keanu's calm demeanor irritated Marcus even more. Why wasn't he angry? Why wasn't he yelling or demanding special treatment? It didn't make sense. Determined to prove his point, Marcus decided to take matters into his own hand. He picked up the phone at the front desk and dialed the local police station. "We have a potential trespasser here," he told the dispatcher, his voice clipped. "A man claiming to be a resident but refusing to provide proper identification." The announcement sent ripples through the crowd. Several residents gasped audibly, while others exchanged worried glances. Calling the police felt like an extreme measure, especially given the circumstances. Even Evelyn looked troubled, though she didn't say anything immediately. Meanwhile, Keanu simply raised an eyebrow when he heard Marcus mention the police. Still, he didn't protest. Instead, he slipped his phone back into his pocket and waited patiently, his expression unreadable. Within minutes, 2 officers arrived on the scene. They were professional and efficient, approaching the situation with cautious neutrality. "What seems to be the issue here?" one of them asked, addressing Marcus. "This man says he lives here, but he doesn't have any proof," Marcus explained, gesturing toward Keanu. "And frankly, I find it hard to believe that someone like him would actually reside in this building." The officer turned to Keanu, studying him carefully. "Sir, can you confirm your identity?" Keanu nodded, offering a polite smile. "Of course," he said. "My name is Keanu Reeves. I live in apartment 14B. Unfortunately, I left my keycard upstairs, but I can call the building manager to verify my information." The second officer frowned slightly, clearly recognizing the name. "Wait a minute," he said, turning to his partner. "Isn't that—" His partner nodded slowly, realization dawning on his face. "Yeah, it's definitely him," he muttered, under his breath. Then louder he addressed Marcus. "Do you realize who this is? This is Keanu Reeves, one of the biggest actors in Hollywood." Marcus stiffened, his confidence wavering for the first time. He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. For a moment he simply stood there, frozen as the weight of the situation sank in. Had he really just accused the Keanu Reeves of lying? The same Keanu Reeves who was known worldwide not only for his acting talent, but also for his kindness and humility? Before Marcus could recover, the building manager arrived, rushing into the lobby with an apologetic look on his face. "I'm so sorry for the misunderstanding," he said, addressing both Keanu and the officers. "Mr. Reeves is absolutely a resident here. There's been some sort of mix-up." With the matter officially resolved, the officers nodded and prepared to leave. As they walked away, one of them gave Keanu a respectful nod. "Sorry for the trouble, sir," he said. "Have a good day." Keanu smiled warmly. "No harm done," he replied. "Thank you for coming." As the crowd began to disperse, the atmosphere shifted noticeably. Many of the residents who had initially doubted Keanu now looked embarrassed, avoiding eye contact as they returned to their apartments. Others approached him to apologize personally, expressing their admiration for his patience and grace under pressure. "You handled that beautifully," Evelyn said, patting Keanu on the arm. "Most people would have lost their temper, but you stayed calm throughout. That's why we love having you here." Keanu chuckled softly, brushing off the praise. "It's okay, Evelyn," he said. "These things happen. Besides, I understand where Marcus is coming from. He's just trying to do his job." Though the immediate tension had eased, the incident left a lasting impression on everyone involved. For Marcus, it was a wake-up call, a reminder that assumptions, no matter how well-intentioned, can lead to mistakes. For the residents, it was a lesson in empathy and the importance of giving people the benefit of the doubt. And for Keanu, it was yet another example of how life often imitates art, presenting unexpected challenges that require patience, understanding, and a touch of humor. But the story was far from over. What none of them realized at the time was that this encounter would spark a chain of events that would bring the community closer together and change Marcus's perspective in ways he never imagined. The tension in the lobby had finally eased, but the ripple effects of the incident were only beginning to unfold. As Keanu made his way to the elevator, several residents lingered behind, still processing what had just happened. Among them was Evelyn Harper, who couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story than met the eye. She watched Marcus closely as he returned to his post at the front desk, his shoulders slumped and his expression troubled. It was clear that the weight of his mistake was starting to sink in. Evelyn wasn't one to let things slide, especially when they involved fairness and respect. She approached Marcus cautiously, her tone softer now, but still firm. "Marcus," she said gently, I know you were just doing your job, but I think it's important for you to understand something about Keanu. Marcus looked up, startled by her sudden appearance. His face flushed with embarrassment, and he stammered, "Mrs. Harper, I didn't mean to cause any trouble. I honestly thought—" "I know what you thought," Evelyn interrupted, holding up a hand to stop him. "But sometimes our assumptions can blind us to the truth. Let me tell you a little about the man you accused today." She pulled up a chair and sat down across from him, folding her hands neatly in her lap. Her voice took on a storytelling cadence as she began to share anecdotes about Keanu that most people outside the building would never know. "Keanu isn't just another celebrity living here for convenience or status," she explained. "He's been part of this community for years, quietly contributing in ways that no one notices because he doesn't seek recognition." Evelyn recounted how, during the height of the pandemic, many residents struggled to pay their maintenance fees due to financial hardships. Without fanfare, Keanu had anonymously donated thousands of dollars to help cover those costs. The money ensured that essential services like security and cleaning continued uninterrupted, allowing everyone to feel safe and supported during an uncertain time. When the building manager tried to thank him publicly, Keanu politely declined, insisting that he didn't want any attention. "And that's not all," Evelyn continued, leaning forward slightly. "Do you remember Mrs. Patel? The elderly woman who lives on the third floor? Last winter, she slipped and fell while carrying groceries. Who do you think helped her get back on her feet and carried her bags upstairs? Keanu did. And he didn't stop there. He checked on her regularly for weeks afterward, making sure she was okay." Marcus listened intently, his initial defensiveness melting away with each word Evelyn spoke. He had assumed that celebrities were aloof, disconnected from reality, and consumed by their own importance. But the picture Evelyn painted was completely different. This wasn't the image of a self-centered star. It was the portrait of a genuinely kind and compassionate human being. Evelyn paused briefly before delivering what she knew would be the final blow. "There's one more thing you should know," she said, lowering her voice slightly. "A few months ago, my grandson came to visit me. He's a huge fan of Keanu's movies, so, naturally, he was thrilled when he spotted him in the hallway. Instead of brushing him off or giving him a quick autograph, Keanu spent nearly half an hour talking to him. They discussed everything from acting to skateboarding, and my grandson left with a signed photo along with advice that changed his perspective on life." By the time Evelyn finished speaking, Marcus was visibly shaken. His earlier confidence had crumbled, replaced by a deep sense of regret. He stared at the floor, struggling to process the enormity of his error. I had no idea," he admitted quietly. "I judged him based on appearances, and I was wrong." Evelyn placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "We all make mistakes, Marcus," she said kindly. "What matters is what we learn from them. Take this as an opportunity to see people differently, not as stereotypes or assumptions, but as individuals with stories worth understanding." As Evelyn walked away, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts, the young security guard felt a surge of determination. He realized that his rigid approach to enforcing rules stemmed from a place of fear. A fear born out of growing up in a tough neighborhood where trust was scarce and danger lurked around every corner. Over time, he had built walls to protect himself, viewing everyone through a lens of suspicion. But meeting Keanu and hearing Evelyn's heartfelt words had cracked those walls, forcing him to confront the harsh reality of his biases. Determined to make amends, Marcus decided to take action. Later that evening, after his shift ended, he knocked on Keanu's door. When Keanu opened it, his expression softened immediately upon seeing Marcus standing there, looking nervous but sincere. "Hey, Marcus," he greeted warmly. "What's up?" "Mr. Reeves," Marcus began, his voice trembling slightly. "I owe you an apology. A big one. What I did today was unfair, and I'm truly sorry. I jumped to conclusions without taking the time to listen, and that's not okay." Keanu smiled faintly, gesturing for Marcus to come inside. "It's all right, Marcus," he said, closing the door behind him. "Mistakes happen. The fact that you're here now, owning up to it, says a lot about your character." They sat down in Keanu's modest living room, surrounded by shelves lined with books and photographs. For the next hour, they talked openly about Marcus's background, his struggles, and his desire to do better. Keanu listened attentively, offering words of encouragement and sharing stories of his own experiences with judgment and misunderstanding. By the end of their conversation, Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose. He vowed to approach his job, and life itself, with greater empathy and openness. From that day forward, he resolved to treat everyone he encountered as an individual deserving of respect, regardless of their appearance or status. Little did Marcus know, however, that this moment of vulnerability would mark the beginning of a transformation, not just for him, but for the entire community. As news of his apology spread throughout the building, residents began to view him in a new light. Slowly but surely, the icy barrier he had unintentionally erected between himself and others started to melt away, paving the way for deeper connections and mutual understanding. And as for Keanu, he simply went about his usual routine, embodying the same quiet humility that had always defined him. Yet unbeknownst to him, his actions and his unwavering kindness had sparked a ripple effect that would continue to inspire those around him long after the incident faded from memory. In the days following the incident, Marcus found himself replaying the conversation with Keanu over and over in his mind. The actor's calm demeanor and genuine forgiveness had left a profound impact on him. It wasn't just about being wrong or making a mistake. It was about realizing how much he had let his past shape the way he treated others. Growing up in a rough neighborhood where trust was scarce and danger was always lurking, Marcus had learned to keep people at arm's length. He had carried that mindset into adulthood, believing it was safer to assume the worst in everyone rather than risk disappointment or betrayal. But now, something inside him was shifting. For the first time in years, Marcus began to question whether his hardened exterior was really protecting him, or if it was actually holding him back from forming meaningful connections. Keanu's example of kindness and patience challenged everything Marcus thought he knew about trust and compassion. And Evelyn's words echoed in his mind. Take this as an opportunity to see people differently. Determined to change, Marcus decided to start small. He began by paying closer attention to the residents of the building, taking time to learn their names and faces instead of simply viewing them as people who needed to be monitored. When Mrs. Patel entered the lobby carrying her groceries, Marcus stepped forward to help without hesitation. She gave him a warm smile, thanking him for his assistance, and Marcus felt a flicker of pride, not because he wanted recognition, but because he could tell his gesture genuinely made her day easier. Word of Marcus's newfound attitude spread quickly among the residents. At first, some were skeptical, wondering if this was just a temporary act of goodwill meant to repair his reputation after the Keanu incident. But as the days turned into weeks, it became clear that Marcus's transformation was authentic. He greeted neighbors warmly when they passed through the lobby, remembered little details about their lives, like Mr. Thompson's love for jazz music or Sarah's recent promotion at work, and even went out of his way to offer help whenever he noticed someone struggling. One evening, while on duty, Marcus noticed a young couple arguing near the elevators. Their voices were hushed, but the tension between them was palpable. Instead of ignoring the situation or jumping to conclusions, Marcus approached them cautiously. "Is everything all right?" he asked softly, careful not to intrude too much. The woman sighed, looking visibly upset. "We're fine," she said, though her tone suggested otherwise. Her partner remained silent, staring at the floor. Marcus hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "I don't mean to pry," he said, "but if there's anything I can do to help, please let me know. Sometimes, having someone listen can make all the difference." To his surprise, the couple exchanged glances before nodding, slightly. They didn't open up fully, but the fact that they acknowledged his concern meant something. Later that night, as Marcus reflected on the interaction, he realized he had taken another step toward becoming the kind of person he admired, someone who offered support and understanding instead of judgment. Meanwhile, Keanu continued living, his life quietly and humbly, seemingly unaffected by the earlier drama. However, his presence in the building served as a constant reminder of the power of kindness. Whether he was chatting with neighbors in the hallway or lending a hand to someone in need, Keanu's actions inspired those around him to emulate his behavior. Even Evelyn, who already adored Keanu, found herself marveling at the subtle ways he brought people together. Inspired by the positive changes happening within the community, Evelyn decided to take things a step further. She proposed organizing a casual get-together, a chance for residents to mingle, share stories, and strengthen their bonds. The idea quickly gained traction, with several neighbors volunteering to help plan the event. Marcus, eager to contribute, offered to handle logistics like setting up chairs and arranging refreshments. On the day of the gathering, the lobby was transformed into a cozy space filled with laughter and conversation. Residents brought homemade dishes, board games, and even musical instruments. The atmosphere was warm and inviting, a stark contrast to the cold formality that had once characterized the building. Keanu attended, mingling freely with his neighbors and sharing anecdotes that had everyone laughing. At one point during the evening, Evelyn stood up to address the group. Holding a glass of sparkling water, she smiled warmly at the crowd. "I just want to say how proud I am of all of us," she began. "This building has always been beautiful, but tonight it feels like more than just walls and windows. It feels like home." Her words resonated deeply with everyone present, including Marcus. As he looked around the room, he saw smiles, hugs, and genuine connections forming, all because people had chosen to embrace empathy and kindness. For Marcus, it was a powerful affirmation that change was possible, both individually and collectively. Keanu raised his own glass in response to Evelyn's toast. "Here's to community," he said simply, his voice carrying a quiet sincerity that touched everyone. "And to remembering that we're all in this together." As the night drew to a close, Marcus lingered behind to clean up, refusing to leave until every last chair was stacked and every plate was cleared. His dedication didn't go unnoticed. Several residents thanked him personally, expressing gratitude for his efforts. One woman even hugged him tightly, whispering, "You've come such a long way, Marcus. Thank you for being here. For real this time." For Marcus, those simple words carried immense weight. They reminded him that redemption wasn't about erasing past mistakes. It was about growing from them and using those lessons to create a better future for himself and for others. By the end of the evening, Marcus felt a sense of belonging he hadn't experienced in years. No longer was he just the stern security guard who kept people at bay. Now he was part of something bigger, a community united by shared values of kindness, respect, and understanding. And though he still had moments of self-doubt, Marcus knew he was on the right path, one paved with second chances and heartfelt connections. Little did he realize, however, that the journey was far from over. The ripple effects of his transformation would continue to influence not only his life, but also the lives of those around him in ways he couldn't yet imagine. The aftermath of the community gathering rippled through the luxury condo building in ways no one could have predicted. What had started as a simple evening of laughter and connection turned into a catalyst for deeper change, not just within Marcus, but among all the residents. The event created a sense of unity that lingered long after the chairs were stacked and the leftover food was packed away. Conversations that began in the lobby spilled over into hallways, elevators, and even weekend brunches at nearby cafes. People who had once only exchanged polite nods now found themselves sharing stories, jokes, and even meals. For Marcus, the transformation was particularly profound. He went from being viewed as an intimidating figure to someone residents genuinely enjoyed interacting with. His willingness to engage openly and warmly broke down barriers he hadn't realized existed. One morning, while stationed at the front desk, Marcus noticed Mrs. Patel approaching with her usual bright smile. She carried a small container wrapped neatly in colorful fabric. "Marcus," she said cheerfully, placing the container on the counter. "I made too much dal last night. I thought you might like some." Caught off guard, Marcus hesitated before accepting the gift. "Thank you so much, Mrs. Patel," he replied, his voice tinged with gratitude. That's incredibly kind of you. It's nothing, she said, with a dismissive wave of her hand. You've been helping me carry groceries lately, haven't you? It's my turn to say thank you. That small act of kindness from Mrs. Patel meant more to Marcus than she probably realized. It wasn't just about the food. It was a symbol of acceptance, a sign that he was no longer seen as an outsider looking in but as part of the community. Over the following weeks, similar gestures followed. Homemade cookies from Sarah, gardening tips from Mr. Thompson, and even invitations to join book club meetings hosted by Evelyn. Each interaction chipped away at the walls Marcus had built around himself, replacing them with bridges of trust and friendship. Meanwhile, Keanu continued to play his quiet yet pivotal role in fostering this newfound camaraderie. Though he never sought attention or praise, his actions spoke volumes. Whether it was offering to fix a broken light bulb in the hallway or simply stopping to chat with neighbors during his morning walks, Keanu embodied the spirit of selflessness that seemed to inspire everyone around him. Even Marcus found himself seeking out opportunities to emulate Keanu's behavior, realizing that true leadership wasn't about authority, it was about service. One afternoon, Marcus decided to take things a step further. Inspired by the positive energy spreading throughout the building, he approached Evelyn with an idea. What if we organized regular events? He suggested tentatively. Maybe movie nights or game tournaments, something to keep the momentum going. Evelyn's eyes lit up immediately. That's a wonderful idea, she exclaimed. Let's make it happen. Together they worked with other residents to plan a series of monthly activities designed to bring people together. The first event, a movie screening in the building's common area, was a resounding success. Residents brought blankets and snacks, turning the space into a cozy makeshift theater. When Keanu casually mentioned he'd be happy to host the next screening at his place, the offer was met with delighted applause. His apartment became the venue for a lively viewing of The Matrix, complete with themed decorations and popcorn, served in tiny paper bags. As the months passed, these gatherings became a cherished tradition. They weren't just social events. They were opportunities for residents to connect on a deeper level. Stories were shared, friendships blossomed, and the building transformed into something far greater than its luxurious architecture. It became a home filled with warmth, laughter, and mutual respect. But the ripple effects extended beyond the confines of the building itself. News of the incident, and the subsequent changes it sparked, made its way onto social media, thanks to a few residents who couldn't resist sharing the heartwarming story. Posts about Keanu's grace under pressure and Marcus's redemption quickly gained traction, sparking widespread discussion about empathy, assumptions, and the importance of treating everyone with dignity. Fans of Keanu flooded comment sections, with messages praising his humility and kindness, while others reflected on their own experiences with judgment and misunderstanding. Some shared personal anecdotes about overcoming biases, while others vowed to approach strangers with greater compassion. The story resonated deeply because it highlighted universal truths, that everyone deserves a second chance and that small acts of kindness can create monumental change. Back at the building, Marcus found himself reflecting on how much his life had changed since that fateful morning. He no longer felt weighed down by the cynicism that had once defined him. Instead, he embraced each day with a renewed sense of purpose. Whether he was assisting a resident, organizing an event, or simply enjoying a cup of coffee in the break room, Marcus knew he was contributing to something meaningful. And then there was Keanu, the man whose quiet strength and unwavering decency had unknowingly set everything in motion. Marcus often caught glimpses of him chatting with neighbors or walking his dog, always with that same calm, approachable demeanor. There was no pretense, no ego, just authenticity. Observing Keanu reminded Marcus that greatness wasn't measured by fame or fortune, but by the impact one had on others. One evening, as Marcus sat in the lobby reviewing the schedule for the upcoming month's events, Evelyn joined him. She handed him a steaming cup of tea and smiled knowingly. "You've come such a long way," she said softly. "I'm proud of you." Marcus accepted the compliment with a humble nod. "I couldn't have done it without everyone's support," he admitted. especially Keanu's. He didn't have to forgive me that day, but he did, and he showed me what real kindness looks like. Evelyn patted his shoulder affectionately. That's the thing about kindness, she said. It has a way of coming back to you when you least expect it. You've taken what happened and turned it into something beautiful. Don't ever forget that. As the two sat together, sipping their tea and watching the comings and goings of their neighbors, Marcus felt a deep sense of contentment. For the first time in years, he truly belonged, not because of where he lived or what he did, but because of the connections he had forged and the person he had become. Little did Marcus know, however, that the journey was far from over. While the building thrived as a tight-knit community, the lessons learned would continue to shape not only their lives, but also the lives of those they touched outside its walls. Kindness, after all, is contagious, and the ripple effects of their collective efforts were destined to spread far and wide. The changes that had begun in the luxury condo building continued to grow, spreading outward like ripples on a pond. What started as a simple act of misunderstanding, and its eventual resolution, had transformed into something much larger, a testament to the power of empathy, forgiveness, and community. The residents, once strangers living under the same roof, now felt like family. They shared laughter, supported one another through challenges, and celebrated milestones together. Even Marcus, who had once been viewed with suspicion, was now seen as an integral part of this newfound unity. For Keanu Reeves, life returned to its usual rhythm after the incident. He remained the same humble, unassuming man he had always been, quietly contributing to the community without seeking recognition. Yet his presence lingered in the hearts of everyone around him, serving as a constant reminder of what it meant to lead with kindness. Whether he was fixing a loose doorknob in the hallway or simply offering a listening ear to someone having a tough day, Keanu's actions inspired others to follow suit. His influence wasn't loud or flashy. It was subtle, yet profound. Marcus, too, found himself growing in unexpected ways. Once consumed by skepticism and defensiveness, he now approached every interaction with openness and curiosity. He began to see people not as potential threats, but as individuals with stories worth hearing. This shift didn't just benefit those around him, it changed how he viewed himself. For years, Marcus had defined himself by his job, believing his sole purpose was to enforce rules and maintain order. Now he understood that his role extended far beyond security. He was a guardian of relationships, a facilitator of trust, and a builder of bridges. One evening, as Marcus stood at his post near the entrance, he noticed a young woman struggling to carry several heavy bags into the building. Without hesitation, he stepped forward to help. "Let me take those for you," he said warmly, reaching for the bags before she could protest. As they walked toward the elevator, the woman introduced herself as Emily, a new resident who had recently moved to Los Angeles for work. She admitted she was nervous about adjusting to city life, especially in such an upscale neighborhood. "You'll fit right in here," Marcus assured her with a reassuring smile. "Everyone's really friendly and we're always happy to help newcomers settle in." Emily looked surprised but grateful. "That's good to hear," she replied. "I've heard some places can be, well, kind of cold. But this feels different." "Already?" Her words stayed with Marcus long after she disappeared into the elevator. It dawned on him that the warmth and inclusivity of the building weren't just benefits for current residents, they were also gifts to future ones. By creating a welcoming environment, they were shaping the culture of the community for generations to come. As weeks turned into months, the lessons learned from the incident continued to resonate. Residents often reflected on how easily things could have gone differently if Keanu had reacted with anger or frustration instead of patience. His calm demeanor during the confrontation served as a powerful example of grace under pressure, proving that even in moments of conflict, compassion could prevail. Evelyn frequently reminded everyone of this during casual conversations, emphasizing that their shared experiences had taught them valuable truths about human nature. "Assumptions are dangerous," she would say, her tone earnest but gentle. "They blind us to the reality of who people truly are. We all make mistakes, but it's how we respond to them that defines us." These reflections weren't limited to discussions within the building. Inspired by the story's viral spread online, other communities began adopting similar practices to foster connection and understanding. A local library hosted workshops on overcoming biases, using the Condo building's experience as a case study. Schools incorporated the narrative into their social-emotional learning curriculums, teaching children the importance of treating others with respect regardless of appearances. Even businesses took note, encouraging employees to approach customer interactions with greater empathy and care. Back at the Condo, the monthly events organized by Marcus and Evelyn became a cornerstone of daily life. Movie nights evolved into themed parties, trivia competitions brought out everyone's competitive spirit, and potluck dinners showcased the diverse culinary talents of the residents. These gatherings weren't just fun, they were opportunities for deeper bonds to form. Neighbors discovered shared interests, swapped stories, and offered support when times got tough. During one particularly memorable event, a holiday-themed craft night, Keanu surprised everyone by bringing homemade cookies shaped like Christmas trees and snowflakes. As he handed them out, he joked, "Don't worry, I didn't bake them myself. My secret weapon is a very talented friend." The room erupted in laughter, and the gesture further solidified his reputation as someone who went out of his way to make others feel special. Even the quieter moments between events carried significance. On rainy afternoons, Marcus could often be found chatting with Mrs. Patel about her grandchildren or helping Mr. Thompson tune his guitar. Keanu joined impromptu jam sessions in the lobby, strumming chords alongside aspiring musicians. And Evelyn, ever the glue holding everything together, made sure no one felt left out, inviting newcomers to join book club meetings or walking groups. Over time, the building itself seemed to reflect the warmth of its inhabitants. Plants adorned the common areas, cared for by volunteers eager to brighten the space. Artwork created by residents hung proudly on the walls, adding color and personality. The once sterile, impersonal atmosphere had given way to a vibrant tapestry of lives intertwined. Yet perhaps the most remarkable outcome of all was the impact on Marcus. His journey from a rigid enforcer to a compassionate community leader demonstrated that change was possible, even for those who thought they couldn't evolve. He often found himself reflecting on how far he'd come since that fateful morning when he'd mistaken Keanu for an imposter. That moment of error had ultimately led him to rediscover his humanity. One crisp winter evening, as Marcus locked up the front desk for the night, he paused to look around the lobby. The soft glow of string lights illuminated smiling faces gathered near the fireplace, sharing stories and laughter. Children played quietly in the corner while adults sipped hot cocoa. It was a scene straight out of a holiday movie, but more importantly, it was real. In that moment, Marcus realized the full extent of what they had built together. It wasn't just a building filled with luxury amenities. It was a sanctuary where people felt safe, valued, and connected. And though Keanu's name might never appear on a plaque commemorating the transformation, Marcus knew the actor's quiet influence had sparked it all. As he headed home that night, Marcus felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the community he was now proud to call his own, but for the lessons he had learned along the way. Kindness, he realized, wasn't just an action, it was a mindset. It required effort, vulnerability, and a willingness to see beyond surface-level assumptions. But the rewards, trust, friendship, and belonging, were immeasurable. And so, the story came full circle. What had begun as a single misstep had blossomed into a movement of understanding and unity. The luxury condo building stood as proof that even in a world often divided by wealth, status, and fame, ordinary moments of connection could create extraordinary change. Through the quiet strength of Keanu Reeves, the resilience of Marcus, and the collective efforts of every resident, they had built something rare and beautiful, a true community bound by love, respect, and the belief that everyone deserves a second chance.